Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jai Shri Prabhupada, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Welcome everyone to Bhagavatam class. Slapmanaste. Nashtar Payeshu Bhadreshu Nicham Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Tamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering a service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Narayanam namaskritta naram chayava narotanam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Om Jnanatimirandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 9, verse 22. So Yam Samasta, let me just get the meter for this. Sorry? Ah, yes. Does that go again? I've lost it. Ah, yes, thank you. So Yam Samasta Jagatam Srideka Atma Satvena Yan Hridayate Bhagavan Bhagena Tenaiva me drishamanu prishtadat yataham Shrakshami purvavadidam pranata priyo so. So yam samasta jagatam surideka atma Satvena yan hridayate bhagavan bhagena Teneva me drishamanu prishatad yataham Sraksyami purvavadidam pranata priyo so. Okay. Please repeat after me. Saha, he, I am, the Lord, samasta jakatam, of all the universes, surit ekaha, the one friend and philosopher, atma, the supersoul, sadvena, by the mode of goodness, yat, one who, hridayate, causes happiness, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Bhagena, with 6 opulences, Tena, by him, Eva, certainly, Me, to me, Drisham, power of introspection, Anus Prishatat, let him give, Yata, as, Aham, I, Shrakshami, will be able to create, Uravavat, as before, Idam, this universe, Pranata, surrendered, Priya, dear, a soul, he, the Lord. Translation, let the Supreme Lord be merciful towards me. He is the one friend and soul of all living entities in the world, and he maintains all for the ultimate happiness by his 6 transcendental opulences. May he be merciful towards me, so that I, as before, may be empowered with the introspection to create. For I am also one of the surrendered souls who are dear to the Lord. Repeat after me, please. Let the Supreme Lord be merciful towards me. He is the one friend and soul of all living entities in the world, and he maintains all for their ultimate happiness by his 6 transcendental opulences. May he be merciful towards me, so that I, as before, may be empowered with the introspection to create. For I am also one of the surrendered souls who are dear to the Lord. Purport. The Supreme Lord, Purushottam, or Sri Krishna, is the maintainer of all, in both the transcendental and material worlds. He is the life and friend of all, because there is eternally natural affection and love between the living entities and the Lord. He is the one friend and well-wisher for all, and he is one without a second. The Lord maintains all the living entities everywhere by his 6 transcendental opulences, for which he is known as Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma prayed for his mercy so that he might be able to create the universal affairs as he did before. Only by the Lord's causeless mercy could he create both material and spiritual personalities like Marichi and Narada, respectively. Brahma prayed to the Lord because he is very much dear to the surrendered soul. The surrendered soul knows nothing but the Lord, and therefore the Lord is very affectionate towards him. Jai Srila Prabhupada. This is a really rich, rich verse, as they all are, of course. And there's so many things you can talk about in this verse. You could drill down, go into a lot of detail. I'm going to try and cover as much as I can in the time allowed. And one of the things that struck me when I was just reading that, where Lord Brahma says, "For I am also one of the surrendered souls who serve the Lord." And I've been thinking a lot about humility and lately, and also how to not be self-disparaging, but at the same time remain humble. And Lord Brahma, of course, we're not anywhere near Lord Brahma's level. He's the, secondary creator of the whole universe. But he's saying here, I am one of the surrendered souls to you. So we could go into a whole kind of psychological, debate here about the difference between humility and also accepting the fact that we may have certain skills. And so it's almost like a dichotomy, really. So at the one hand, we're going, okay, well, I have these skills, let me use them in Krishna's service. And humility comes into the factor when you understand that actually any skills I have is by the grace of the Lord. So I remember listening to an interesting lecture by Urmila Devi Dasi, and she was talking about this thing about humility, false humility, and then understanding that we do have skills that we can use in Krishna's service. If we don't have them, Krishna will provide them. But we should always understand that we are not the source of those skills. It's not my brain, my initiative. It's all coming through by the grace of Krishna. And that really struck me when I was reading that. So it's worth something to contemplate on. So we've been reading these beautiful prayers by Lord Brahma, and they're continuing on in this verse. And you really get the feeling how heartfelt that is. It's a real prayer to the Lord. Be merciful towards me. You're the one friend and soul of all living entities. You maintain us for our ultimate happiness. And what's our ultimate happiness? Our ultimate happiness, of course, is to what? Yes, Krishna Prem, to recognizing and understanding that we have our eternal relationship with Krishna. And this path of bhakti is uncovering that. We're removing aside all of the anartas, all of the impurities, all of the conditioning to reach one day that platform of understanding what is our eternal relationship with Krishna. And then he's praying that please be merciful towards me as you were before, so we can understand this is now, he's waking up after his sleep, waking up after the partial dissolution, and he has to again create the universes. And then he says that please empower me. So we can pray like that every day, all day. Please empower me, Krishna, so that I'll have the strength, I'll have the determination to continue on this path. And I was listening to a Bhagavad Gita lecture of Prabhupada's early this morning, and Prabhupada was saying that even if you don't stay, even if for some reason you have to leave, there's never any loss or diminution. Because sometimes devotional life can upset the apple cart a little bit, and you suddenly have to start looking at your life and the way you look at things in an entirely different way. And sometimes it's a little difficult for us to come to terms with that, and we may go away for some time. But Krishna never forgets you, and again you'll come back. Maybe not this life, maybe the next life, but you will certainly resume your devotional path. So in this heartfelt verse, he's talking about all of the opulences of Krishna, and we know what they are. Would someone like to volunteer some of the opulences? Yeah, or strength? Or fame? Or wealth? Or knowledge? Or strength? Or renunciation, and all beauty. Very good. Yeah, so those 6 opulence, because Krishna is omniscience, he's Vibhu, and we're Anu, we're atomic, we're tiny. We have like Krishna in quality, but not in quantity. We're minuscule and he's massive. But Krishna wants us to be happy, because sometimes we think, why on earth are we suffering in this material world? It's really, sometimes you look outside and you think, oh, this is so beautiful. Krishna's given this lovely paradise. And then there's floods, and then there's, fire, and then there's bushfires, and there's, all kinds of horrific things. So we have to understand that that's not our ultimate happiness. Our ultimate happiness is not to be satisfied in this material world. Krishna is giving us these little tests all along. It's like, wake up. It's not all cozy. So it's not that we want to be depressed about it, because Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. But we have to be realistic. And I remember as a young devotee, I thought, because we were all young, right? There was no old folks like myself. We were all young. Prabhupada was the only elderly person. The oldest person might have been 27, 30, but that was very unusual. All of us were around 18, 19, 20, 21. So I was under the misconception that nothing bad would ever happen. Who's getting sick might get a cold, everyone's well. And then slowly as you grow up, you get married and you have your children, and then you see, when they get sick and they get fevers, and even some of my, devotee friends, they would lose their children to some disease, very, trying. You go through your own personal travails, and then you start to understand, okay, what does it actually mean when Krishna says that he will protect you? So it may not be just the material body that he protects. And he does in many cases. Some of us have had near-death experiences, and we know Krishna's been there to help us. I was traveling at high speed, coming from a seminar I was giving to the Brisbane devotees one day, and I fell asleep at the wheel. and it was going 110 kilometers. I was right near the railing, so if I'd hit it, I would have careered off that. I would have gone across the 3 lanes, possibly killed myself and maybe other devotees. And then when I was about 1.5 feet from the railing, all of a sudden, Radha Govardhana Dari appeared before me. And I got such a shock that actually I would see Krishna, because I'm such a mundane person, that it woke me up. And then I can understand that, Krishna's there, he's in our heart, he's our best friend. And I've had other experiences like that, and I'm sure many of you have, that Krishna is there, he is a person. And we can pray to him every day, not just once, but many times a day. That Vandanam is one of the 9 processes of devotional service, that prayer. And Lord Brahma is exhibiting this very beautifully in this verse. So, and Prabhupada advised us to pray with sincerity. And he even said, you can say your prayers in English. You don't have to know beautiful Sanskrit prayers. You can stand in front of the deities, and in English you can pray to them. And he wrote in a letter, he wrote, regarding your request to sing prayers in English, this is a nice suggestion, and you may do it. So far as the songs that you have written, you may send me a copy of them, and I shall see them. Pray to Krishna to please keep us always engaged in the service of his lotus feet. So we're not just praying, oh Krishna, no, don't let troubles come to me. No, we're praying, Krishna, whatever my fate is, whatever my destiny is, whatever the lessons are that you want to teach me, please let me remember you. So that's the troubles are going to come, but the real test of your character and your determination is that you can rely on Krishna. Oh Krishna, what we say in the morning, we say, oh my Lord, you can handle me roughly.
You always free to handle me roughly.
Yes.
Free to do anything and everything.
But for I'm always your unconditionally. So it's that unconditional love that we're trying to practice and trying to develop. So Prabhupada said, so pray to Krishna. He says Krishna is very kind and he is never ungrateful and will give you more and more opportunity to serve him. That is his mercy. So our whole, one of our whole aspects of Bhakti Yoga, of devotional service, is cultivating this service attitude. Not, oh, okay, someone's going to ask me to do something. I'm just quickly going to go around the other side of the temple so they will ask someone else. Or, oh no, they've asked me to do this service. Oh, I really don't want to do it. We want to be enthusiastic, because when we are enthusiastic to serve and we take on the service, then what happens? Krishna is very grateful and he gives us more opportunity, because how our whole life is about service. And that's personified in Srila Prabhupada's life, where his life was just service, 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 not to himself. In a lecture I listened to recently, Prabhupada was saying to a guest, he said, I was very happy in Vrindavan. He was in America when he spoke this. I was very happy in Vrindavan. I'm not happy now. I'd much rather be in Vrindavan. But my Guru Maharaj told me to take this knowledge to the West and disseminate it. And without Srila Prabhupada, none of us would be sitting here. We'd all be out there in the material world suffering like anything. And, I'm convinced that if I hadn't been lifted up by Prabhupada and brought to here, I don't think I would have lasted to my ripe old age. And pure devotion means to pray to the Lord, begging some service. And after all, we're chanting that every day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, my dear Lord, oh, the energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. So when we're asked to do something, take it up with enthusiasm. Of course, that doesn't mean that there's not a balance. It doesn't mean that, particularly when you're a new devotee, you want to take on as much service as you can because the enthusiasm in there and you're inspired, but you also have to make sure that you have a balance. So you are having time to read, you are having time to study, you are having time to get enough rest. Because most of my early devotional life, I can just remember being totally exhausted because there were so few of us in Mayapur and we had to do so much service. And the result was we're always very, very tired. So when you're tired, you don't really have the head to study and think. So strike the balance without mollycoddling yourself. So in the 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj, he explains that when performed properly, the 9 processes, one of which is this prayer, Vandanam, they're recognized as pure devotional service. So, of course, we're not at the stage where we're serving purely. We're still covered over. But that's our end goal, is how to become pure, how to get rid of all of these anarthas that are burdening our hearts. And it's not going to happen, well, it can happen in a second. Prabhupada said you can surrender in a second. But for most of it, it's determination and it's a bit of a hard slog. But if we just keep at it, because we get the mercy of Prabhupada, we get the mercy of Radha and Krishna, Radha Govardhana Dari, then the path opens up and we get realizations upon realizations upon realizations. And we can see how our hearts are in the process of being purified. And Prabhupada's the greatest example. So the system is, this 9 processes is known as the Bhakti Marg. And the other system is Pancharatrika Vidhi, which was established, introduced by Narada Muni, which is the method of deity worship. But we accept both. It's like the twin rails. But it's very important that we come every day, wherever possible. Of course, for you living on the farm, it's much easier. You have that opportunity. But we must come and worship the deity in the temple. If we're not Brahmins or we're not engaged in the Pujari Seva, then just coming to glorify the Lord, to chant before him is very important. And I remember in Mayapur, in the very early days, just as we had the large Radha Madhava were going to be installed, and a devotee family who mother and father were expert tailors, and they'd come to make all the patterns for Radha Madhava. And I was original Radha Madhava's seamstress, but not a tailor. So they were doing all the patterns and making sure they fitted perfectly. And they had a room in the long, not the long building, along the wall. If you haven't been to Mayapur, there's a number of walls, and along one used to be all little rooms. Now there's shops. But he had set up, and they'd had a very beautiful set of very large Jagannath deities, and they would dress them very opulently. And then one day, Srila Prabhupada was going for a morning walk past those deities, and they were all standing outside the front, of the room, hoping that Prabhupada would compliment them on how beautiful these deities looked. And they were arrayed very beautifully, just like temple deities. And Prabhupada didn't stop. He, of course, saw the deities and then he walked on. And then later on that day, he said that one must not worship the deities at home in the way that we worship the deity in the temple. One must come to worship the deity in the temple. So for those devotees who live far away from the temple, and most of us have deities in our home, and those who live far away, then they can worship the deity in their home just like they worship the deity in the temple. But for those of us who are close by, it's very important that we don't disregard, that we come here and worship Radha Govardhana Dari. That's really, really important. And along with, of course, worshipping our own deities nicely. But the deity in the temple cannot be neglected. So the 9 processes of devotional service are, hands up anyone? Shravanam, Kirtanam, anyone else? Vishnu Smaranam, Padashevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, which we're talking about, Dasyam, Sakyam, and Atmanivedanam. And in each of these processes, there's an exemplar, or the perfect example of a person, a great personality, who is epitomizing those processes. So Shravanam Kirtanam, of course, is Parikshit Maharaj. Kirtanam, or chanting, who would that be? Not exactly. Yes, Shukadev Goswami, because he was reciting Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. And then remembering was Prahlad Maharaj, because all of the terrible things his father was perpetrating on him. What did he do? He just always remembered Krishna, and Krishna would save him. And then there's Padasevanam, worshipping the lotus feet, and that's Lakshmi Devi, because she's always massaging the lotus feet of the Lord and always saving him. And then Archanam, that's exemplified by Maharaj Prithu. He used all of his royal possessions in the service of the Lord. He didn't worry about anything for himself. Everything was used for Krishna. And then praying is Akrura, Krishna's uncle. He personified this beautiful prayers, is exemplar of this Vandanam. And then Dasyam, or executing the orders or service. Who might that be? I'll give you a hint, it's in Ram Lila. Hanuman, yes, well done. And then Sakyam, serving as a friend. Arjuna, very good. And then complete surrender, Atmanivedanam. Bali Maharaj. If you recall that pastime, he was had given everything away because Vamana Dev had tricked him. He appeared as this beautiful little dwarf boy, and he tricked Bali Maharaj. And Bali Maharaj's spiritual master said, no, be careful, he'll take everything. And he's thinking, Bali Maharaj is thinking, oh, it's such a little boy, little beautiful boy. What can he take? So, of course, then once he received the benediction, yes, take what you want. And Vamana said, oh, I just want 3 steps of land. He's thinking, oh, how big can the 3 steps of land be? And then, of course, he said, yes. And then Vamana Dev grew and grew and grew, and his 3 steps of land covered everything, covered all the Bali Maharaj's land, all of the universe. And then that was 2 steps. And then he said to Bali Maharaj, well, where can I put my 3rd step? And then Bali Maharaj said, on my head. So he exemplifies that complete surrender. So, and because Akrura is the exemplar of the prayers, in Bhagavatam it's explained, Lord Krishna was very pleased by Akrura's offering of prayers. His smile was captivating Akrura more and more. The Lord replied to him as follows, my dear Akrura, in spite of your submissiveness, I consider you my superior, on the level with my father and teacher and most well-wishing friend. You are therefore worshipable by me, and since you are my uncle, I'm always to be protected by you. It's so wonderful how Krishna takes on these different roles and relationships with all of his associates. So here he is, Krishna is actually so humble, most humble. And he's saying, oh, actually, you know, Krishna is the source of everything, including Akrura. But he's so humble and so sweet that he says, oh, I consider you my superior. And of course, you know, we know that when Krishna woke up in the morning, he'd offer his obeisances to his parents. He would honor the elders. So we've got lots of lessons we can learn from Krishna himself by how he was humble. You know, how can we do that? How can we be respectful to our elders? How can we honor our elders? How can we treat each other, our contemporaries or our peers, very sweetly? and in a loving way. We don't have far to look. We can just look at Krishna and Prabhupada. So there are also lots of other prayers. And when you go through Bhagavatam, there's prayers of Queen Kunti, there's Akrura's prayers, there's Lord Shiva's prayers and Prahlad's prayers. We've got this beautiful prayer of Lord Brahma here in this chapter. And Krishna, he is our dearmost friend, and he does care about the fact that we're suffering. And sometimes you think, how can Krishna care about me? You know, like I could be sitting in an assembly of 2,000 devotees in Mayapur. Maybe a handful might know me. You know, they won't know. And Krishna, he's got unlimited jivas, all of part of his energy, his marginal energy, his tatashta shakti. And, you know, how can he even think of me? But Prabhupada says he does. He cares for each and every one of us. And in a lecture I heard, Prabhupada lecture, Prabhupada said, Krishna is sad when he sees the suffering. Of course, Krishna is ever joyful, but he has that compassionate heart for us. So don't think that, we're insignificant to Krishna. He's there sitting in our heart, or rather standing in our heart, and he's witnessing all of our activities. He's witnessing our travails. He's witnessing our suffering. He's witnessing our enthusiasm, and it pleases him. So we, in the material world, we sometimes get a very dear friend, and they're very dear to us, and we feel like, oh, they will always be with us, always support us. But something happens. There's a falling out, or there's a misunderstanding, and that best friend no longer is your best friend. But Krishna, he's always your best friend. He will never, ever misunderstand you. He will never abandon us. So it's such a wonderful life that we have, that we're never abandoned by the Lord. He's always there. And who better than not to be abandoned by is Krishna. And he's so kind that he actually descends himself. He comes to this material world to protect the devotees and annihilate the miscreants. And he's so merciful that he actually sends his pure devotees to this material world, like Srila Prabhupada. He sent Prabhupada to this material world just for the purpose of saving the conditioned souls. So we have a very enormous debt of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada that we can never actually really repay. So we have the different energies of the Lord. We've got the internal energy, the external energy, the marginal energy, and where the marginal energy, we're sometimes conditioned, sometimes not so conditioned. The Nitya Siddha devotees who come to this material world, they are never conditioned. They're here on a particular goal. And we are conditioned souls, and they are so merciful. They've come to drag us out of our quagmire of material conditioning. So without the mercy of the Lord, we're powerless actually to execute devotional service, because Krishna actually induces and Krishna sanctions. So Krishna has that ability that he can inspire us all in devotional service, and any devotional service we want to perform, he has to sanction that. In all aspects, he's the supreme controller. The difference is that we also endeavour. Because when I read this in fourth canto, I was thinking, oh, okay, so we simply pray to Krishna, oh, please induce me to engage in devotional service. And any devotional service we might think we could offer, Krishna has to sanction. So I asked Bandhu Maharaja that question, and he said, but don't forget there's the endeavour. So we have to endeavour. And when Krishna sees that endeavour, then he provides us with more and more inspiration. It's 4:24:39. Prabhupada talks about that. He states that the Lord, being the life air of every living entity, can induce every living entity to engage in his real life story with full bodily and mental strength. Then in the second last sentence, Prabhupada says, even though one may desire to engage in the service of the Lord, without sanction, one cannot do so. So that's where the test of sincerity is. That when Krishna sees our sincerity, he brings us, he introduces us to Krishna consciousness in some way. And that endeavor, of course, we have to make the effort. And when I was looking at this story, of course, I always over prepare, so I could probably speak for another hour, but that won't be happening. So, in concluding, it's very important that we understand Krishna's mercy, that we appreciate Krishna's mercy, that we pray. We use Vandanam in one of the 9 processes of devotional service, and we pray with sincerity. And Krishna, he will hear us. Srila Prabhupada will hear you. Your spiritual masters will hear you. And there's a nice story I heard, I think Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj told it. He said that Narayan was sitting down. Of course, Narayan, Krishna, Narayan's an expansion of Krishna, but in our purposes, they're kind of interchangeable. So Narayana was sitting down, eating his lunch. And Lakshmi Devi was serving him the lunch, or one of his queens was serving him the lunch. And then all of a sudden, they could hear, Gurudev, Gurudev, Gurudev. And Krishna immediately jumps up and is about to run. And one of the queens said, oh, my dear Lord, why are you stopping eating your food, your meal? He said, I've heard people calling for you. Oh, my Lord, oh, Narayan, help me, oh, my Lord. And you wait till you finish eating. But you haven't even finished eating and this person is calling out for their Gurudev. Why are you going? He said, oh no, when someone's calling out for their spiritual master, I have to go and help. So Krishna is also very pleased because Krishna said, Mad Bhakta Puja Arayat. So worship of my devotee is more important than worship of me. So when we worship Srila Prabhupada, we should all be in here for Guru Puja. We should always be praying to Prabhupada with great devotion. That's very, very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. And I came across this very, very nice story that I like, and I'll conclude with that. And that's a story about humility and not using devotional service to get our own way. It's called Puna Mushtika Bhava. Again, become a mouse. So there was this great rishi meditating in the forest, and this little mouse comes running to the rishi. And because the rishi was very advanced, he could understand mouse language, or the mouse could speak Sanskrit, not sure. But anyway, the mouse says to the Muni, oh, please, my dear rishi, the cats are all bothering me. They're all chasing after me. They want to eat me. Please help me. Please, I want to become a cat so they won't chase me. So the Muni goes, chants a mantra, and then lo and behold, the mouse is a cat. So the cat goes off, happily chasing the mice now. And then all of a sudden, all the dogs in the village see the cat, and dogs and cats generally have a not very amicable relationship, generally. So the whole pack's chasing after the cat. The cat's running here, there in fear, and races back to the ashram of the Muni and says, oh, my dear Muni, now the dogs are chasing me. Please make me a dog. So he chants a mantra, and lo and behold, the cat is a dog. And he goes strutting off, he's very happy, and he's going around in the forest now. I'm a dog, the cats can't get me. And then all of a sudden he sees a tiger. And he was quite a big dog. So the tiger thought, oh, here's a bit of a substantial snack, my mid-morning snack. So he chases after the dog. And the dog manages to find his way back to the ashram of the Muni. He goes, my dear Rishi, please, a tiger's after me. And the Rishi says, well, what do you want? He said, make me a tiger. So Rishi chants a mantra, and then this dog becomes this big 9-foot Bengal tiger. And then the tiger suddenly starts looking at the Muni, smacking his lips. And the Muni's saying, and what are you thinking? And the tiger's thinking, oh, I'm thinking I might eat you. And then the Muni chants another mantra, again a mouse. So he again becomes this little mouse because of all his desires, not understanding that there's always going to be suffering in this material world. So we don't want to be like the mouse. We want to be consistently have the right attitude, and we'll get the right attitude by practicing devotional service. And it may take a little while, it may take a long time, but we are on the path. There's no reversion. We are there. Even if we waver sometimes, Krishna will draw us back, because Krishna is so kind that he never forgets. He's in this purport, he's grateful to the service. So thank you very much for listening so patiently. And are there any comments or questions? Vaishnavi?
Thank you for the class. You're mentioning that we all have skills and they're gifts from Krishna, and we need to utilize them in Krishna's service. And you also mentioned that we need the sanction of the Lord. So we may have the skills, but if it's not sanctioned by the Lord, then we can't do anything. So how would that apply the English saying where if you don't use it, you lose it. So from the example we gave also about
Can you just take your mask off for a second? Oh, okay. It's just hard to.
So, and then you also gave the example of the mouse that again become a mouse. So can you talk about the correct mentality of having skills, but then also having the sanction of the Lord, how to approach it?
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Very nice question. So my way of understanding is that we may have skills, but we shouldn't be proud of those skills. We should acknowledge that, yes, I have certain skills, but they're coming from Krishna. If Krishna wants to employ those skills or engage those skills, then we make the effort, and then Krishna, if it's his desire, he will give us that opportunity. Sometimes it may take a long time before your particular skills are actually either developed enough or an opportunity arises. So it's not that, this sometimes happens with maybe highly educated devotees. They may have many business degrees or PhDs or this thing and that thing. But we should understand that it's not the material qualifications that Krishna is looking for. That's not to say that one shouldn't be educated. I often encourage devotees to get their degrees and get their qualifications. But it's not about walking around thinking, oh, I am so qualified, I am so good at organization, I'm so good at public speaking, I'm so good at philosophy, or I'm so good at dressing the deities, or I'm so good at whatever we're given, but rather seeing that the source of those skills is coming from Krishna, and how do we engage ourselves in that service. And once again it comes to prayer. Krishna, I'd like to serve you in this capacity. Is there an opportunity for me? Maybe serving in that capacity won't be beneficial for you. Pride might come into it. The desire for fame, that might come into it. So it's all about that, not thinking yourself useless, because that can be very discouraging. You can become very depressed. I'm useless. I've got nothing. I don't know anything. I may as well just go away. I can't give anything to this movement. But that's not the case, because Krishna will give the intelligence. Krishna will give the skills. That it's that fine line between pride and humility, and then accepting the fact that yes, we have things that we can offer to Krishna. And sometimes he doesn't use you in that capacity. It's for whatever reason, it's not the best thing for you. So Krishna doesn't use those particular skills. Does that kind of answer your question?
Question, and also I just wanted to add that when we want to do some service, it says in the spiritual world there's unlimited service, and devotional service is unlimited service. And I just wanted to add in that there's also the principle of etiquette, that so many people may have the skill, but they can't just come and bulldoze those who have been serving. So that any service we do, we respectful of other devotees, and Krishna creates opportunities. Because I've observed that even in the DT department, that some devotees are humbly doing the service, and then some opening comes up, and there's some devotees away, and then opportunity comes up for service, and then I've also seen the other side where devotees sometimes they can manipulate and bulldoze and make up stories just to get that service. And I see that the person who humbly kept on doing the service and opportunity came by from Krishna, sustainable, and they peaceful and happy, and one who, even though they may have such a so-called high service, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy, because you can see the way they got that service was through not the proper way.
That's a really good point, Vaishnavi Prabhu. Very, very good point. And then another wonderful thing about devotional service is no matter what you're doing, it's all pleasing to Krishna. So you can be, heading up the Abhishek or dressing the deities, or your service can be cleaning the temple. According to the Sastra, that's actually has the same, is the same to Krishna. So sometimes we're under the illusion that, because I'm a pujari, I'm, may think like that. I'm a pujari, I'm a brahmana, I'm very special, I'm allowed to go into the deity room, and then the devotee may be cleaning the temple room. But in Krishna's eyes, they're exactly the same. Their service, if it's given with a sincere heart. So when we try and think, or when we think, doing this service is prestigious, that is not going to help us. So it's a really good point you made that, Krishna, he does arrange things, and sometimes when he doesn't, like you may have a desire to worship the deity, and you may have even expressed that desire to the pujari or head pujari or whatever, and nothing comes of it. Then, my way of thinking is, okay, well, Krishna doesn't want me to do that service. He wants me to do something else. So we do need to be mindful about not looking for prestige in our service. This is a very important service, or this is a very important person, so I'm going to be really nice to them because I want, they can help me go places, and then disregard devotees who have less profile. This is all very neophyte. It's very mundane. So we need to see each and every one of us as devotees of the Lord and treat everyone accordingly. And of course that means that the elders lovingly instruct the juniors, not with a desire to overlord, but lovingly instruct them because they know it's for their benefit. And the excuse me, the peers, they treat each other in friendship and with equality. And then the juniors, they respect their elders and try and take their association. And we also need to understand that there are many layers of seniority. There's seniority by initiation. There's seniority by spiritual realization. There's seniority by age. So someone may be have been initiated a year before someone else, but that other person may be senior to them in age, maybe 20 years older. So that younger person, although initiated, has to treat that older person, who may not be initiated, with respect. Not that, oh, because I'm initiated, you have to do what I say. That's not Vaishnava etiquette. And with the seniority by realization, like for example, the four Kumaras, they appear just like little boys, little naked boys, but they were very, very great devotees. So even though someone may not have been long in the movement, but you can see how much advancement, the rapid advancement they're making. So really, to make sure that we don't make any mistakes and offend devotees, we have to treat each other, all of us, to everyone, with respect and with love and with that notion of how can I help that person. And then there's, it's not that it's all one, we're all, disregard any kind of Vaishnava etiquette. No, that's very important. Because Lord Chaitanya himself instructed the six Goswamis to even write books about etiquette. Lord Chaitanya himself was focused on that. Srila Prabhupada himself was focused on that. And that's why I give the Vaishnava etiquette courses, so devotees understand, the different layers of etiquette. But underwriting all of that is that not the desire to lord it over, but to try and help each other on our path to devotional service. And our real constitutional position is that love, that eternal relationship with Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. Jai Srila Prabhupada, or Glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.